A Russian drone crossed into Romania and struck a residential building in Galați. Not Ukraine. Not a military base. A civilian apartment block on NATO soil injuring civilians on European Union territory. NATO's Secretary General was on the phone with Romanian authorities within hours. The EU Commission President declared that Russia's war of aggression had crossed yet another line. And Zelensky, the same morning, told his people, "We have intel indicating Russia is preparing a new massive attack." 232 drones launched in a single night. A nuclear plant losing power for the 16th time. And a coalition of 28 countries that has now pooled $1.5 billion for Ukrainian missiles still waiting to hear whether America will deliver. This is where the war stands tonight. In the next several minutes, we will walk through exactly what happened on the night of May 28 and the morning of May 29 from the drone strike on Romanian NATO territory to Zelensky's warning of a massive new offensive. We will cover the specific details of the Romania strike and NATO's Article 5 implications, the 232 drone overnight attack and Ukrainian air defense performance, the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant's 16th power outage, the PURL missile fund now at $1.5 billion across 28 nations, and how Ukraine is now using AI-powered drones to strike Russian supply convoys. This is the state of the war and it is moving fast. The night of May 28 into May 29 was one of the most intense of the entire war. At approximately 5:15 a.m. on May 29, NATO's official account confirmed an apartment building in Romania was struck by a drone as Russia attacked Ukrainian infrastructure near the border. The Secretary General was in touch with Romanian authorities and condemned Russia's recklessness. Within hours, NATO Secretary General Rutte had spoken directly with Romanian President Nicu Cerdan. According to the statement attributed to Rutte and posted by NATO, he assured the President of NATO's absolute solidarity and affirmed that NATO stands ready to defend every inch of Allied territory. He called Russia's reckless behavior a danger to all, noting that the implications of Russia's illegal war of aggression do not stop at the border. By 5:44 a.m., European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen posted that Russia's war of aggression had crossed yet another line. She confirmed civilians were injured on EU territory and announced that the EU is preparing a 21st package of sanctions. Zelensky moved quickly. He spoke with President Dan on behalf of all Ukrainians, expressed solidarity, and confirmed Ukrainian and Romanian military teams were in direct communication on further coordination. On the same morning, the Associated Press reported that Russian forces launched 232 drones against Ukrainian regions overnight, of which 217 were intercepted by Ukrainian air defense. 3 people were injured in a strike on Zaporizhzhia city, including an elderly woman, with residential buildings and vehicles damaged. The IAEA added a deeply alarming data point. For the 16th time during the military conflict, the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant temporarily lost all off-site power. Emergency diesel generators activated to maintain safety functions during a 1-hour outage. IAEA Director General Grossi noted that nuclear safety remains precarious and that the cause of the outage had not yet been determined. Meanwhile, at BBC World reported that Ukraine is now deploying AI-powered drones specifically targeting vital Russian supply convoys, a battlefield development that this may suggest is beginning to shift attrition dynamics at the front line. And in the same 24-hour window, Zelensky issued a direct public warning: "We have intel indicating that Russia is preparing a new massive attack." He urged citizens to pay attention to air raid alerts and identify. Let us step back and assess the significance of what happened. The question analysts and NATO officials are asking most urgently is, does a Russian drone hitting a Romanian apartment building trigger Article 5? The honest answer is that NATO has been careful not to invoke Article 5 automatically for such incidents, distinguishing between an intentional attack and a stray weapon from a combat zone. But the Secretary General's language that Russia's recklessness is a danger to all is notably sharper than previous statements, and the pattern is escalating. Romania has now been struck. This is not a hypothetical. The first question the international security community is asking is whether the 21st sanctions package will be meaningfully different from the previous 20. NATO Secretary General Rutte's statement that Russia's war needs to end, and that Russia's disregard for civilian safety applies beyond Ukraine's borders, represents the clearest articulation yet that Europe's patience is reaching a threshold. On the PURL missile fund, the numbers are striking. According to Zelensky UA, 28 countries have now contributed a combined $1.5 billion to purchase air defense missiles, including for Patriot systems. Norway, Netherlands, Canada, Bulgaria, Belgium, the United Kingdom, Spain, Sweden, Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia, and Iceland are all publicly named contributors. The critical gap, Zelensky stated directly, remains America. Some analysts, including historian Timothy D. Snyder, posted a blunt assessment: if the West provides Patriots and sanctions Russian energy, the war could be over. A second question worth examining is the battlefield technology dimension. BBC World's report that Ukraine is using AI drones to strike Russian supply convoys, and the U.S. Army's own public statements about testing counter-UAS capabilities at scale together point to a war that is accelerating technologically in ways that conventional military doctrine did not anticipate. The Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant losing power for the 16th time in the same week all of this is happening adds a radiological risk layer that, while currently managed by emergency generators, represents a persistent and potentially catastrophic wildcard in an already volatile environment. Does a Russian drone striking NATO territory in Romania trigger Article 5? NATO has consistently distinguished between deliberate attacks and weapons that stray across borders during combat operations. However, some security analysts suggest that if the pattern of strikes on NATO territory continues, pressure to invoke collective defense provisions will become politically difficult to resist, especially ahead of the NATO Ankara summit. Can Ukraine hold the line without new U.S. Patriot missile supplies? Ukrainian air defense intercepted 217 of 232 drones in a single night, a performance rate that may suggest current capacity is holding. However, analysts warn that missile stockpiles are finite and that without continued U.S. replenishment, interception rates could degrade in a sustained high-volume attack campaign that Russia appears to be preparing. In Romania, the impact is immediate and visceral. Civilians were injured in their homes in Galați. The government responded swiftly and strongly, in Zelensky's words, in a principled, prompt, and strong way. Romania has been a critical logistics and defense corridor for Ukraine throughout the war, and this strike puts its population directly in the crosshairs of a conflict that was supposed to stop at the Ukrainian border. For NATO as an institution, the strike on Romanian territory is precisely the scenario the alliance's planners have quietly wargamed for years. Secretary General Rutte affirmed that NATO stands ready to defend every inch of Allied territory and committed to continue enhancing readiness to deter and defend against any threat, including from drones. Practically, this means accelerated air defense deployments along the eastern flank, a process that NATO's F-35 deployment to Poland, announced the same week, is part of. For Ukraine itself, the political and military calculus is stark. Zelensky's intelligence warning of a massive incoming attack, issued openly and publicly, serves a dual purpose: alerting civilians and pressuring international partners simultaneously. The PURL initiative, reaching $1.5 billion from 28 countries, demonstrates real coalition commitment, but as Zelensky stated plainly, sufficient supplies depend on America. For the broader European Union, von der Leyen's announcement of a 21st sanctions package signals that the EU has not run out of economic levers, but each incremental package faces questions about whether Russian adaptation has already neutralized much of the intended pressure. And in Finland, the 33rd defense assistance package worth €128 million passed in the same 24-hour window, demonstrating that Nordic and Baltic states continue to lead on Ukraine support even as the larger Western allies navigate domestic political constraints. Now, in the interest of balance, here is the strongest counterargument. Some analysts and policymakers argue that Western escalation, particularly unlimited missile supply to Ukraine and comprehensive Russian energy sanctions, carries its own serious risks. The concern is that cornering Russia with no off-ramp could provoke even greater escalation, including potential use of tactical nuclear weapons or deliberate attacks on critical infrastructure in NATO member states. There is also the argument that 20 rounds of EU sanctions have demonstrably failed to end the war, suggesting that the marginal impact of a 21st package may be limited. Some analysts have specifically questioned whether supplying Patriot missiles changes the strategic outcome or simply prolongs a war of attrition. As Timothy D. Snyder posted a view that is itself contested: U.S. policy at present may be functionally oriented toward keeping the war going rather than ending it, whether intentionally or by default. That framing is disputed, but it reflects a genuine school of thought among those who believe the West has not yet made a clear-eyed choice between ceasefire and victory. Russia struck a NATO apartment building. NATO called it reckless. The Secretary General said NATO stands ready to defend every inch of Allied territory. But no Article 5 has been invoked. The question that lingers: at what point does reckless become active war? Tell us in the comments, should NATO invoke Article 5 after a drone hits a civilian building on alliance territory, or is that too dangerous a threshold to cross? We want your take.